on Reddit, so I logged on and I read it. It hit me like a head kick from Anthony Pettis. I had to come back and...
Miesha running with head down and straight arm jabbing her way in may work against Julia, but I do not see that working against Norma Dumont, Holly Holm, or Mayra Bueno Silva. Seeing this immediately reminded me of Juliana Peña. Kinda makes sense because they are close, or were close. I don't hear them speak of each other very often these days. Anyway, if Miesha is going to have another run, this isn't going to work against the top of the division. Even for a Holly Holm, I don't think this strat will be effective enough to complete a takedown. Speaking of which, Miesha's single leg was going nowhere until she got the trip. That does show her fight IQ is still intact, and a lot of women in her division, I believe, would be susceptible for this method of attack. Side note, if you're one that makes noise and gets excited every time two fighters end up in a north-south position, grow up. Julia attempted to sweep toward the cage while almost closing legs on Miesha's head. I do not see why she couldn't have planted her foot and rotated her hips, given Miesha's positioning. I don't know, maybe she could tell, but she had to have felt where Miesha's weight was placed. Then she tried to roll over her own head onto Miesha, which first off wasn't going to work anyway, but Miesha could feel that and semicircled around to her right side, effectively pushing Julia back to the fence and giving her the side control she wanted. I point the exchange out because it shows that Miesha can still execute her OG style of control. This is vintage cupcake. Tate got her foot planted and applied excellent weight distribution in the right places. Avila made a mistake in trying to turn belly down into Miesha. She didn't have much else to do, but I point this out because Tate's dominance at this point is kind of being given to her. DC points this out as Julia does the same thing later in round 3. In my opinion, Julia was kind of drowning in this fight. It looked like a first-timer in jiu-jitsu class. That might sound brutal, but that's what I see. Julia defended strikes decently in round 1 at least, I suppose. This sequence opening round 2 exposed Miesha a little. She sucks at feints. This is where I think Miesha would have some issues on the feet with, say, an Aldana or Mayra. Julia got her lead foot on the outside. Tate tried to step out and Julia kept position and clipped her more than once. It was a good cracking too, but I think Aldana or Mayra would hurt her a lot more if they landed that same strike. Julia's IQ ain't that bad, y'all. She caught that kick to facilitate a bit of panic, and this is where Miesha can fall apart and tends to do quite often. And this is what can be critical if Miesha is considering making another run. But not everyone is Julia Avila, let's be clear. I don't consider Julia Avila a bum, but I do think ring rust or just jitters hindered her in this bout. Miesha isn't taking down the top 3 the way she did Julia here. She got Avila looking to her corner for advice, and she didn't have her legs rooted. But I think Miesha can drive back top contenders in the same fashion. Tate pretty much does what she wants throughout round 2, but again, I feel like her looking so dominant is due to her opponent's performance, at least in part. Avila had several spots in round 2 for sub attempts. Didn't get anything. Almost didn't even try for any. Miesha got the sub victory at the top of round 3, but even the commentators say it, Julia was outclassed. DC said they asked Miesha what it looks like now with Rhonda, Amanda, and Holly, but it's like, dude, who cares? The real question is, can Miesha make another run? Because Tate isn't going to be fighting those ladies. Maybe Holly, hometown hero shout out, but she already beat her. Who cares? Nobody should, because Holly isn't going to be in a title fight anytime soon. When I say soon, I mean the first half of 2024. This division is totally fucked right now. We got Norma Dumont fighting Yana Santos. For what? Can you imagine if Yana beat Norma? Yana is on a 3-fight losing streak, including one to Carol Rosa, who Norma beat back in April. So why are we doing this? This also goes to show I'm right about Eileen Perez in my first podcast episode. Miesha's call out for Holly isn't the worst. Everyone above her is booked for the next 60 days, but I'm calling it now. Miesha isn't going to get Holly at UFC 300. There is no $15 million offer for Ronda Rousey to face Tate at UFC 300. Miesha has gotten the word that a big fight is coming for her. I think that fight is the winner of Rocky versus Mayra for the title at UFC 300. That makes perfect sense. Oh no? Rankings barely mean anything to the UFC anymore. Just look at Sean O'Malley's leap. Is Miesha that elite and relevant? I actually think she is. I think the flex came pretty hard at IFW when she said, I think I'm one fight away from a title fight. Dude, this, although it was Julia Avila, might be that one fight away from the title, just so there's a name on the big card come April. Miesha looked physically, in an athletic sense, y'all, keep the pants on, very, very good. She had tone, she had definition, she had agility, she had relatively decent explosivity that might catch somebody off at some point in a fight because she does still got timing, and the fight IQ seems to be intact. Another thing is Miesha can still crack, like I've always said. Holly is a name for the idea of 300, but for me, even if they book it, not the right opponent, Miesha was the fucking headliner at UFC 200. By the way, Juliana was the prelim headliner. You see where I'm going with this? You see how these kinds of things make sense because matchmakers pay attention to shit like this. You see, guys, this division is very fucking interesting if you look at it in the right way. What a story it would be for Miesha to beat the winner of Rocky versus Myra at UFC 300 for the title and face Juliana Peña at IFW. Now that makes the top of the division must see. And also, let's see what Irene Aldana does. If she's sharp and dominant, Tate versus Aldana is another I'll accept. But I say fuck it. Shotgun Miesha to that title. Let's see what happens.
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.